So, fuck yes. Welcome to After the Hype. We are hosting the podcast with me, as always, is Jonathan Hardesty, Emily Blake, and Sam Garrison.
Hey.
This week's special guest we have on again, Elliot Campos.
Hi.
The meekest hi you've ever had.
And I've had meat guys.
This week we'll be talking about the wonderful film from earlier this year, right?
I think so.
Time is a weird thing to me right now.
Time is a flat circle.
Ugh.
Or a round baby.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's better. That's so much better.
Yeah, that makes way more sense to me right now. But yeah, from earlier this year, A Quiet Place. Financial juggernaut that it was, even though it cost fucking nothing. So good for them, but we'll get into that later.
It has the distinction of being a movie I watched before knowing it was on the schedule.
Ooh.
There's a lot of those where I'm like, I'm going to let the podcast choose the movie for me.
All right, don't watch Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. That's
Okay.
coming up soon.
Okay. Nice. Noted.
Wait on that pile until you have to watch it.
Yeah, that's usually what I do for those.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, I'm like, I missed it because of time constraints,
Sure.
baby, all that. Let me watch it now. And
Yeah.
then bonus, it showed up for this podcast.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Let's do a quick where have you been doing, and then we'll get into today's episode. I will talk about what I didn't talk about last week and got caught out of the episode. I started watching American Horror Story. I am partway through season 3 now. I'm through season 1 and 2, and I have to say I enjoy it for the most part. I like it when it does weird things. I don't
3
like...
is what? The Witches one?
Yeah.
I think that's where I jumped off after
Okay.
Witches.
Halfway through, I jumped off.
I've heard Witches, it's either you quit in Witches or you love how stupid it is. And I'm like, I'm not sure where I'm at yet. I'm only like 2 episodes in.
There were a lot of points where I almost quit in season 2 because that was the Asylum one, right?
I loved Asylum. I thought that was really cool.
There's some weird parts in the middle where, like, not parts plot-wise, but just meandery parts where it got, like,
I think
what
because
am I doing?
I think because I'm binging it, I might skip those. It might make the wheel spinning
I watched a lot of that
obvious.
when Karina was a baby and I fed her at, like, midnight one
That
morning.
might
I was
have
like,
something to do with it, too.
yeah.
My major thing with the show, though, is like, and maybe it's just I'm more adult now than I was then. I don't know, but I'm kind of tired of seeing rape in movies and TV. I'm just kind of done with it.
Yeah.
Really over it.
And 100% of the time, it's never about the victim. They forget about, like, they don't care.
Yeah,
And it's in the filmmaking choices down to the T. They don't care about the victim.
Yeah, and it's so like it's making me not really enjoy American Horror Story very much because I'm like, all right, well, I got through this season here, and there was a couple things I didn't like, but I'll move into it. And then I start Coven, and the very first episode, a girl gets drugged and gang raped, and it's like, the fuck? Like, I want to enjoy
forgot
the
about
show.
that.
I honestly do
Yeah.
want to enjoy it, but like every time this happens, it's like, why am I wasting my time with this?
It's
like,
unfortunate because there's cool ideas. There's some cool premises in there.
And that's what's kept me is like there are good things in the show, but every time that happens, it's like, all right, I'm almost like if there's another one in this season, I'm fucking out, and then I'm just done with it because I don't need it.
The first season did get me though. It was a very gotcha for me in the reveal.
Yeah,
I didn't see that one coming, so I was very happy to be surprised.
But it was still clearly a rape, and then it's like, but who raped her?
No.
And it's like that's the mystery.
No, not the rape. The reveal of she was a ghost the whole time.
I figured that out immediately. Like that was one of those
yeah, I like that it was distracting enough to where
Either way, I would say it's a good show. I'm not sure if I love it or even finish season 3, but it's been interesting to see what people have been talking about for now 7 years. And I still might watch.
Wow. Yeah.
I might watch Cult just because I want to see the Trump season because I think that's an interesting idea. But
And they're bringing it all back together with like the apocalypse or whatever.
yeah, that doesn't look very good. But who knows? Either way, that's it for me.
Yesterday, my partner and I went to the Korean movie theater and tried to watch a Korean movie called The Great Battle. It's not good. Don't watch it. We walked out.
The what?
The Great Battle. One of the most egregious line crosses in the history of line crosses. It pissed me off, and I was very angry until we walked out. Because there's a scene.
You walked out of it.
We walked out of it. I don't walk out of movies my partner does, and I couldn't argue against it because it was really bad. It just wasn't getting any better. In that, like, there's a moment in the beginning where there's this huge battle, and there's these two dudes who are roughly the same age. They're dressed in the same military uniforms, and they have this exact same haircut. And there's one of them runs up to the other one and says, "We gotta retreat. We gotta retreat." And then a guy comes up, and we're on the opposite side of them. And the bad guy murders one of them. But I wasn't sure if that was a line cross. I was like, wait, did they just cross the line? But because these two guys, it's not because they're both Asian, they were dressed the same, wearing the same haircut. And we flipped the line, and I was like, wait a minute, which guy just died? And it was about 5 more minutes before someone said a name, and I realized which dude was actually dead because they crossed the line on the scene. And from that point on, I know. So from that point on, I was like, why did you do that? And because we had just met these characters, this was like the introductory scene. Yeah,
jeez.
have you ever seen like a war movie? And in the beginning, every single dude
They
looks
look
exactly the same.
Yeah.
So we didn't. So we left the movie. We went back to his place and we watched Police Story, which has just been remastered. And that was pretty rad. That's way better. And the stunts in that are amazeballs. So.
I've never actually seen that. You keep
So
meaning
good.
to. Yeah.
There's a stunt. There's a big thing where they basically constructed a little shanty town on the side of a hill, and they sent a bunch of cars down it. And there's no way they couldn't have done that in one. Like, it had to have been done in one because they destroyed so many things. There's no way to reset that. So they sent cars, like, through this little shanty town, blowing shit up over here, crashing here, doing this. And they probably had, like, 5 cameras on it. And it is balls. You're just, like, looking at it like, oh, now that I know filmmaking, I look at things like that. And I'm just like, oh, my God, the work that went into destroying everything in this scene is amazing.
It's kind of awesome.
It is very awesome.
Yeah.
John, what about you?
So I'm still on the music kick. Haven't watched a lot. I've been doing a little bit of music listening after powering through over and over again the Nightwish album Decades. I was like looking for some more music. So I'm in a music mood, and Metric just came out with a new album a day or so ago called Art of Doubt. And Metric is my jam. I like what they're doing. I like their sound, and it's nice to kind of see bands that you've followed for a while have a new album come out, because I don't keep track of that anymore. I'm not in a music scene to be like, anticipate. I don't have the hype for those. So I really like the sound. It has a few little shoutier moments that are reminiscent of her older stuff, blended with some more mature stylings from the more modern stuff. It's really nice. I like it.
Elliot, what about you?
I finally saw a podiatrist and got some medicine, and so that stuff on my feet is starting to clear up.
Cool.
Yeah, and I saw a Battle of the Sexes. That was
Oh my God.
tennis.
Did you like it?
Yeah, I my familiarity was with Mario Tennis, but beyond that, I'd never really dabbled in
So
the
you
area.
knew how to score a game.
Aces, right? Mario Tennis Aces?
No, the Nintendo 64 version.
Okay.
The introduction of Waluigi. Like
Got it.
that
You
was,
didn't even play the Wii version.
No, so I'm very like
You're very
old
versed
school.
in tennis, yeah.
Yeah.
Very old school. So my knowledge is really dated. I don't even know if that Bobby Jean King thing was a big deal back when Mario Tennis came out. But seeing it dramatized was enjoyable. I think it was from the filmmakers behind Little Miss Sunshine. So
I
it
didn't know
was
that.
it was kind of similar, just like a crowd-pleasing movie, but this one didn't really make an impact. I think it was kind of passed over for everything last year.
It was touted as like a Oscar movie, and then it just wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, Emma Stone coming off her win, and then Steve Carell in that very being a dramatic actor guy. So I think it deserves a look, for sure.
I don't feel like it was Oscar worthy.
I
I know that's
It
what
was
that was the push. Was the
Yeah,
idea
it
when
was
they're
an
making it.
enjoyable movie. It wasn't like, oh my God, amazing, but it was it was worth a watch. Yeah.
It was a game, set, and match.
Sam, what about you? We're just gonna get out of this one.
The only movie that I've seen recently was The Predator, and I really don't want to talk about that. So I've been listening to a podcast by Nicole Byer from the Netflix show Nailed It. It's called Why Won't You Date Me? And it is great. She's been like chronically single, I guess, for her whole life. She's never been in a long-term relationship, even though she's like super cute and like funny and very successful, and
She's fucking awesome.
yeah, she's amazing. And so she brings people that she's hooked up with in the past. She brings on friends. She brings on other comics. She brings on a guy that she knows whose floor she peed on. And she's like, why didn't you date me? She has them go through her Tinder profile, and it ends up being a really interesting look at love and relationships, and it's really fun. I've been kind of binging it because I only just learned about it, but she's had this podcast for like a year, and it's really fun to kind of go through this evolution with her. And it's really great. It's been an absolute delight, and she is so funny. Like she's become my new favorite comedian. So
I've seen a lot of people online do not like her and do not find her funny, and I think
Maybe that's why they won't date her.
I guess. They're out of their mind. I think she's one of the funniest people on TV right now. Like, she's the reason I keep watching Nailed It, and I didn't really like season 2 as much.
Ooh,
but
she brings
she's
on
so
Wes. She brings on
Oh,
Wes
does
from
she?
Nailed It for an episode, and it might be the best episode because he is like a happily married, lovely human being who just thinks he's like, yeah, you're a great boss, even though you harass me all the time. And they end up having this really lovely conversation. It's so worth checking out.
I will listen to at least that episode. Was that everybody? Mm-hmm. Yeah? All right. I guess it's time to start talking quietly about A Quiet Place. The box office mojo on this thing is kind of insane. It cost $17 million, which means that they definitely did not pay Emily Blunt very much money. I'm sure she...
Well, her husband directed it.
Yeah, I'm sure that they got her real cheap and then paid her with money that it made on the back end, which was a fuckload. So it cost $17 million. It made $332. So I can see why we're getting A Quiet Place sequel, even though this movie does not call for one in any way, shape, or form.
I don't believe you.
It
does. It 100% does. It's not a fully fledged movie. It doesn't have an ending. I'm very
I will
upset
agree
about
with that,
this.
but I totally agree with you there. But I don't think that this movie calls for a sequel.
I'm
But we can get
worried
into
about
that.
what a sequel
Yeah.
would be.
We'll get into that because I think it's interesting in many ways. But either way, so the review that I'm really going to skip around on this thing comes from Arthur Baggins on Metacritic.
Artie Bags.
I gotta say, I'm picking it mostly because of his name. I like the name Arthur Baggins. But this guy just essentially hated the fuck out of this movie.
What?
And I could see not liking it. I could even see disliking it. But hating it, I don't really get. But that's okay. We'll get to it. 0 points. This literally is the worst movie ever made. In no way can I understand how anyone could suspend belief. This would require a below third grade logic, an IQ less than their shoe size, and or payment from the film's production company. And then luckily he only paid 99 cents. And basically he just kind of goes on and on to say that you have to suspend your belief too much for the movie to make sense. How that garners a 0 out of 10, I don't understand, but there you go.
Why is he so angry?
He's an angry dude, that Arthur Baggins.
Jesus, dude.
You should go back to the Shire.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bilbo stole your spotlight.
Yeah, no
Jesus.
kidding. So that's kind of where we're coming at. Some people don't like it, some people loved it, and it made a fuckload of money. And that's kind of a good framing to talk about this movie. But before we do, we have to do a 30-second breakdown. Elliot, are you excited and ready for this?
You have to say words, Elliot. You can't let cop out and just be quiet.
Okay. Thanks for throwing the gauntlet.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
As ready as you can be?
Yes.
All right, here we go. 30 seconds for A Quiet Place. Here we go, 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 go.
In this post-apocalyptic world, you have to be very, very quiet, or the monsters will hear you. And if they hear you, they will... Achoo!
I don't know how long to let the silence go after that. I think that was enough time to say that you failed, but it was entertaining, so I'll allow it.
Okay.
Perfect. That's exactly... That's actually most of the movie, surprisingly enough.
There's also some people in it.
So the thing that I actually want to start with this thing is kind of little to do with the movie, but I find it interesting, and I think it's a good place to start. This was originally bought by Paramount to be a Cloverfield sequel.
That makes sense.
Could have been.
It could have been. It would have been a worse movie, I think, though. Although it might have fed more into the lack of an ending that Sam had a complaint for, because if it's a Cloverfield sequel, none of them really have endings. They all kind of have like an open door, like there's going to be more, and that's kind of what this one does too. But
I think just by putting the Cloverfield name on it, it does bring baggage to it, as opposed to just being an original story where you go in without those kind of preconceptions. I mean, like watching the Cloverfield Paradox, like when you play that up on Netflix, like just sitting down, you're like, okay, I'm going to expect like A, B, C, and D. Just because J.J. Abrams has these kind of tropes that anything associated with him usually demonstrates.
Yep.
So I think it definitely worked not to have it have that title on it because it made a lot of money. And I think that like with Cloverfield Paradox, it really needed the Cloverfield name in the title.
I also think if this had been a Cloverfield movie, they would have created an antagonist. And they would have needed somebody, because the Cloverfield movies are about people who inherently aren't all that likable. And this movie had characters who were very likable, and I think that they would have wanted some kind of dark, person in the story.
They would have had like somebody show up at the camp and
Yeah.
start
The old
living
man
with
in the
that.
woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leon
think-
Russell would have had a bigger role, which is great. I love Leon, but
Yeah, did you guys recognize him? Emily, did you recognize
Wait,
him?
who were we talking about?
The old man in the woods.
Oh, no.
He was a recurring character on Prison Break. He was like the head of the company or whatever. Like he was silent and would write things down
Right.
on
Oh,
post-its.
yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
No, I didn't reckon he had a wig in this thing.
He was
very
also
long hair,
like
anyway.
I think he's gotten a little skinnier.
Oh,
And-
a
Yes.
little, yeah.
yeah, he was also in the pilot of the X-Files.
Okay.
I've asked him to be on this show a few times, and his schedule is completely nuts. But he's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
He's coming to my Starbucks all the
It's
time.
fun to watch on some of the, like a really bad, really bad seasons of Prison Break, but he really was an interesting character.
What's his name? Wasn't it like the chief or something?
I forget.
It was something.
Yeah, it was definitely something, but it was something
Accurate.
like that. It was like the general, I think, or I don't know.
Yeah.
And I could have this wrong, but I believe that he and John were in a play together, and that's how he convinced him to do this one
cool.
bit part in this.
Neat.
Because I know they're friends, because he posts on Facebook about him constantly. But I thought like that it's one of those things where if this had been a Cloverfield sequel, I don't think it would have done as well. Like, or I mean, there's that chance it would have done better, maybe, because people are like, oh, I liked 10 Cloverfield Lane, maybe I'll like this one. But I think, kind of like to what Elliot was saying, I think this thing needed to stand on its own to be the movie that most people enjoyed.
Well, not having seen it, I've been like, well, this is so similar in feel to 10 Cloverfield Lane. Like there would be like this disappointment that it was like, oh, another one of these smaller movies. Like,
Yeah.
why didn't they do something different? It's kind of like Cloverfield's kind of in this weird catch. Like they have their own. They've painted themselves into a little weird thing.
Yeah, Cloverfield Paradox was a bad move.
But that's where they felt like they had to go, and that's
Yeah.
where like it would have felt like having like this would have felt like a Quiet Place paradox.
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
Cloverfield. I mean,
Because Overlord that's coming out from Bad Robot is also not a Cloverfield movie.
Right.
And it was originally supposed to be. So I think that I don't know. I'm wondering where the Cloverfield franchise is going to go. That's what's interesting.
It sounds like nowhere after
Yeah.
Paradox.
It
Which is
seems-
unfortunate because it was like on Netflix. I mean, I know it was like fucking Paramount, man. Like if it weren't for Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes, they really wouldn't have much at this point. Because that was the other fascinating thing about this was like Michael Bay co-produced it.
because John worked
Yeah.
with him on 13 Hours.
I love this weird friendship that they formed because it's completely incongruous in my mind. Like,
I feel the same way about the relationship between, like, whenever I found out that Emily Blunt and John Krasinski are married, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
She is so far out of his league. But then I watched this movie, and then I was like, all right, I get it.
Well, the thing is, I love when movies like this are good. Like, it's because passion projects usually don't turn out too great because you're getting favors. And favors are wonderful. I ask for favors all the time, but you never... It's different when it's somebody else's passion and you're showing up because they need your help. And I feel like everyone showed up, like, top of their game for this thing. And I think that really helps. Like, because if this movie had just been kind of like, John wanted to make a horror film, so we're kind of helping him out a little bit, it wouldn't have worked. And I think everything in this movie, essentially, for the most part, works.
Yeah.
But let's talk about some of the stuff that doesn't. Because there is a lot of stuff that, much like our friend, how do you call him? Artie Bags? Was that
Artie
it?
Bags.
Artie Bags. There is a big suspension of disbelief to buy into this movie. Did anybody else have a problem with that?
No, I didn't.
no.
No?
for me, it wasn't the suspension of disbelief that made it difficult. It was like my biggest beef is with the ending because I felt like the human story was unearned. The way that it kind of resolved between the father and the daughter. And then the way that it ended, I was so mad at the ending. I haven't been this mad at the ending of a movie since Gladiator, and that was a very different kind of anger. Maximus deserved better.
What were you mad about?
About this movie?
Yeah.
I just, I didn't think that his act of sacrifice, it felt so meaningless because it rendered the family so vulnerable. It wasn't an act of love. It was an act of stupidity. And I didn't love, she just, cocks a gun and is ready to go. And it's like, dude, you're stuck with 3 kids and a baby. Even if you defeat these 2 things, it just all felt so hopeless.
I totally... the end of the movie...
I couldn't get around that.
When Chewie and I walked out of this thing, I said it was the most disappointing ending since Edge of Tomorrow. And Edge of Tomorrow, I also loved the movie.
It's a great movie.
But the ending just didn't click for me. And I had the same thing with A Quiet Place. I love A Quiet Place. But the ending, I totally agree. It just doesn't quite click. And I think it's mostly because we spent the whole movie going very, quiet, if you will. Everything's kind of played down. It's serious, and then action things will kind of happen. But it's still just kind of we want to keep these things contained. at the end of the movie of Emily Blunt, who, mind you, just had a baby and is standing up firing shotguns, like, and then her
She also just watched her husband die on camera.
she just had a baby though. The bottom half isn't working very well. She's not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's the suspension of disbelief. All right.
Yeah, but like so she'd be motivated for sure. But I agree. Like the death doesn't really motivate the rest of the movie because all it does is make them more vulnerable and more likely to die.
I think I saw it very differently. I think in that moment he was like, well, like he said to her, they know what to do. They have worked really hard. He knows she'll protect them. He knows they can protect each other. And at this very moment, they're about to die and he can't stop it. He's seriously injured. He's about to die
That's true.
anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
So he's like, there's only like if they die and he lives, what good is he then? But he can get them through this next moment and let them take it from there, but that's all he can give them. So I think that was
And
the scene for me.
Here's the thing: is if the movie had ended after that, I think I would have liked it more. I think if it had ended with, all right, we got through this, the emotional punch is done, and they're going back to their family, and they need to figure a way to get out of this fucking farm now because all the things know that they're here. I'm more into that than seeing the very like it.
The movie changes genres at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
It
Like,
promises not the same movie. So that's why it's weird that
But
they're
I feel
making
like
a sequel
that's like,
because
well, yeah, okay, good.
they're making now the next sequel has to be the action film.
yeah,
Which
Because
is okay.
it's okay, but I don't think they want to make the action film. What worked
No.
well was what they did in this movie. They want to do this again.
yeah.
More.
It-
It's like,
this-
well,
it's
no,
like-
you didn't. You stopped. You stopped this genre.
Well,
like
let's not worry about what the next movie is going to be
No.
as part of discussing this.
Sure,
movie.
but no, but my complaint is more of what he's saying. Like the changes genre, like the whole, and this is again the suspension of disbelief that I think like these were the things that bumped me. Was you have the entire world, no one thought these things only hunt through sound. No one in the entire world thought to try to use sound against them.
we don't know that. They can't communicate with anyone in the entire world. So people might have
Sure.
figured it out. We don't know, but also it's unique to her because it was a hearing. I mean, how would they have like come up with the right frequency? It was just a fluke
Sure.
that they found it.
Yeah.
But I also think as for like her cocking the weapon, there's only 3 in the area.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
That's true.
so they realize that these 2 coming for them are the last ones, and then maybe they can try to find a way to continue getting on the radio and letting other people know. Kind of like Independence Day, where they're like, let them know how to take these bastards down,
I also wonder if they're isolated because they're in a small town and if maybe people are kind of quarantined in cities. But that's the thing. I feel like there's so much more to this world that I wanted to know. I feel like for Emily Blunt's character to have earned that gun cocking moment after giving birth and stabbing herself in the foot and like having tetanus, like she's gonna die of tetanus, you guys. That's a horrible way to die.
It just
but
invites
anyway.
his questions. though.
Yeah, that's
It
what I
really
mean. I
invites
wish
it, like you said.
we had seen more from her. Like it felt very much like he was the provider of the family and he handled all this stuff and we didn't really see her. We saw her being a mom, which is great, but I wanted to see more of that like prepperness from her, especially because she is the one that's having to do all the hard work of care, like having a baby in silence as like not a Scientologist, It's just I just wanted more from these characters so that those moments felt earned instead of just like, oh yeah, like that would happen, I guess. I don't know. This is one of those movies too where like I saw it on home video after the fact. I didn't get to see it in theaters, and I feel like I kind of missed out on some of the experience.
Opposite because I was thinking as I was watching this movie at one point. I said something to the characters. I'd been sitting inside, and I very rarely. I'm usually half on my phone watching movies at home. I very rarely can I pay full attention. This movie, I didn't touch my phone except to look at one person on IMDb. And I was
Which
just
person?
sitting. I was looking to see if the girl was actually deaf.
Oh,
Yes,
she
she
is.
is.
Yeah.
And as I was watching this movie in complete silence, at one point I was like, "Oh no, don't!" And then I immediately clapped my hands over my mouth because it was so loud. And I was just thinking, I'm really glad I'm home because if I'd been in a theater, I worry that someone would have made a noise or looked at their phone or done, at least here I know I can control the environment.
And here's the thing is I think the filmmaking is on point in this movie, and I think John proved himself a very capable director because I saw this thing in the worst theater in LA, in my opinion, which is AMC 16 in Burbank. The worst people in LA like to go to AMC 16 in Burbank. Hate that theater. I go to it all the time. The theater, we saw it either opening weekend or the weekend after opening. Very early on, theater was totally sold out, dead silent.
That's cool.
Like, it was like when I saw The Artist. Like, The Artist is the only other movie I can think of, like, recently where I had an audience just completely just like, shh, it's a quiet movie.
someone ruined the sacrifice in Last Jedi in the middle of our theater. They said something in the middle of that moment. So I think that's for me. I was like, I don't want that to happen ever again.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish I was a millionaire so I could just like build a theater in my own house and never have to worry about people again.
Yeah.
But I think the filmmaking on this movie was super on point because it worked. Because I think if everyone had that reaction where they kind of chatter throughout the movie, no, this wouldn't be a $300 million movie.
Yeah.
It would have failed.
That's true.
And too many people saw this and enjoyed it to have talked the whole way through.
And the movie sets its tone and it sets its requirements for you as a viewer pretty early, almost from frame one. And I respect that. I respect that the movie kind of taught me in the first few minutes how to interface with it.
Yeah,
gave me my expectations, and which is why the ending, what we were talking about for so long, because it had a weird discordant nature to it. But the movie knew how to be stressful, tension building, and it taught me. It gave me immediately the rules for watching it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that when you see the nail get caught and you see the like insert of the nail, you spend, I don't remember how much time it is between seeing that nail and seeing her step on it.
It feels like 10 minutes.
Oh
feels
my
like
God, the whole time you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. You know it's coming. And so when it happens, you're like, no, God. Like, does the anticipation of her stepping on that nail, I'm really, because they could have just kind of thrown it aside and then had her step on it later. Instead, they let us know it was going to be a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And keep in mind, they never fixed the nail problem after she stepped in it.
Yeah, so she
so
pointed
like
it out to
everybody
them.
came down the stairs, I'm just like,
Well, she pointed it out to the kids, like to
Yeah.
make sure they knew, but still.
But kids are kids,
Yeah,
and I'm
kids
like,
are kids.
I was still stressed for the whole movie for that. That was like
Oh,
my
yeah, for
scariest
sure.
part.
I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about the movie is it does a very good job. And if Chewie could be on here, she'd explain it better than I could. But you know, that's the way time works. She pointed out like this movie does a great job of escalation.
Oh, for
like,
sure.
every time, like how could this get worse? The basement's flooding.
I mean,
What
just,
the fuck?
Just the
Like,
fact that she's pregnant. It's like really
Yeah.
thoughtful. Like, what is the worst fucking thing that could happen? And builds on that tension because the anticipation.
Yeah.
As soon as you realize you're pregnant, you're like, oh, like what is going to happen when she has to give birth? And you're waiting on that the whole time. So when she finally goes into labor, you're like, oh no, this is really bad. And
Well,
it's just,
and after having a baby in the hospital, there are so many things that like you're in kind of in this fugue state. You're sleeping, you're waking up suddenly. Your environment is constantly shifting. So as you wake up, you're always disoriented with a new baby, and the movie captures that stress almost perfectly.
Yeah.
Where like you wake up suddenly, what's wrong? She's not moving. What's going on? Where is
Yeah.
she? Like that immediate like.
Oh, she's floating away from you. In the
She's floating away.
in the
And-
That was horrifying.
And
God.
I don't know if that as a parent immediate like 100% goes away. You just kind of push it back to the back of your mind where you like
Yeah.
someone like the baby cries or something happens and you wake up like what's going on? What's wrong? Immediately crisis. You're trying to find exit points. Like you're doing like survival things unconsciously, and the movie really kind of tapped into that for me.
yeah, it did. Sorry, go ahead.
I was to say, and then when the creatures destroy that whole like house above them, I was like, oh fuck, you can't rebuild. What are you gonna do? You can't hammer.
Yeah.
So it's like an even like everything is just bad to worse to worse to worse to worse the whole movie.
They need to do the logical thing and move next to a waterfall. That was actually as a joke, but I want to talk about it a little bit. I think that's my favorite moment in the movie. And I as much as it's my favorite moment in the movie, I feel like we got robbed a little bit when they didn't bring the daughter. I understand why he didn't, like from his character's point of view, but I feel like because I was saving it for the end. We'll get there. I think the strongest thing in the movie is the daughter. I think she's amazing, and I can't wait to see her in every movie she's in after this. And I think anytime they take her away from the movie, they're making a mistake. And that moment, they really let the son have a great moment, like a really emotional punch, where he gets to tell his father, "You're being a jackass to your daughter," and it's this really cool thing that I didn't expect from this movie. And I really wish the daughter had been there, but I still think that just that heart punch moment of the movie was just very, very well done and great.
It was also an actual break in the tension, like a real, true. They got to speak to one another. We got to hear their voices, which kind of helped us feel a little bit more of their character.
Yeah.
And it was all completely safe. Like we as an audience got to breathe. So I think we got to savor that emotion. And that's why it really was sad the daughter wasn't there, because she was so compelling.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see what you're saying. At the same time, that was a very important moment for the boy. Like,
Yes.
I think what was really cool, and you might blink and you miss it, is that kid was very meek. He didn't want to be tough. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want to do all these things. And I mean, the first time we meet him, he's sick. And he was like all scared. And at the end, when the dad sacrifices himself, while the daughter, is freaking out, he hits the emergency brake and sends the truck down the trail. He has got the presence of mind to not look at dad and not, I mean, he screams at dad to try to save him, I guess. But then he has the presence of mind to be like, oh, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's go. I can't waste time on that. And I thought that was such a great little arc, is that like he was the one who ended up being totally with it while everyone else was freaking out in that.
I totally missed that. That's
Yeah.
actually a really good
That's
point.
cool.
Like, yeah,
Good
that's
point.
really well done. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. Like the filmmaking in this is really on point. Like they did a very good job. But let's talk a little bit about the daughter. Elliot, do you have anything to say about her? You've been quiet for almost a solid half hour.
Yeah, I'm getting into character. Yeah, so I watched. Did any of you guys see John Krasinski? He did some variety, like breaking down a scene YouTube video.
No,
I'm trying to remember which scene it was, but I remember one point that he brought up was that the actress, I think her name is Millicent Simmons.
Millicent sounds right. I'm not sure about the last name. Is it
Okay.
Simmons?
I think so.
He was saying that for him, that was a non-negotiable aspect of the movie. Like, he had to have a deaf actress in this part because it wasn't just to accurately reflect the character, but it was also so she could give him insight as a storyteller to be able to, do the sign language stuff correctly and also find ways of expressing emotions in ways that wouldn't just be obvious. It's kind of like if you go to Google Translate, go to a language, it's going to be really mechanical. But if you actually are talking to a native speaker, they're going to be able to, here's the kind of a slang or the dialect of that region. And one thing for her, that young actress, she isn't just a very good sign language speaker, but she's also a good actress because she was actually the one who told John Krasinski to not just say I love you, but to say I've always loved you. And I feel like that makes that scene a little more effective because part of the arc of the story is that the Millicent Simmons character, she kind of carries guilt with her because she gave the rocket to her younger brother, and that led to his death. So that's definitely a fucked up thing to carry on your shoulders as a young child, and especially with that kind of disability she has. I mean, I've definitely had medical things in my past where you can kind of feel like you're a burden on your parents sometimes. So I feel like she's extremely an emotional centerpiece for the movie because there's got to be a part of her that thinks that she's more trouble than she's worth for her parents.
It's really like I love both the fact that she thinks that she's responsible for her brother's death. She feels like a burden on her parents, and she's not aware of the fact that literally everyone but maybe her brother also feels responsible for her brother's death. Like they all think it was their fault. And it speaks volumes to both her and everyone in the movie that it's clear they don't talk about it. Like they might talk about him, it doesn't seem like the type of family that closes themselves off to the memory of the one who passed away, which does happen. It feels more like he died, it was brutal, let's not talk about how he died. And it's interesting because at different points you can totally see they all blame themselves.
Oh God, that scene of Emily Blunt talking about I could have carried him.
Yeah.
Like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, and I think too, like they're amongst themselves, they can kind of subconsciously communicate that with each other. So even if they don't know, there's kind of like this sense that like that you all blame yourself. Like you can kind of pick up on that on cues, but
no, because the son literally has to ask his dad, "Do you blame her?" And it's like,
and that's the thing.
no.
That's what I was going to get to. Is like with John Krasinski's character, like he plays it very guarded, and it's very interesting to see that dichotomy between them. Like, of course she's going to be worried and blame herself because she's seeing that in his eyes, and he's not giving her anything. And so it ties to what you were saying, where I've always loved you. Like that's such a good gut punch, and just because you can't help. Like sometimes you can tell with like it's easier to tell with maybe your mother, your sisters, or brothers how they feel about you, how they see you. You can kind of see yourself through them. It's a lot harder with a father figure to see.
Yeah, when I was growing up, my dad didn't really say I love you a lot. And when I was looking back on it later, I was like, oh, well, he didn't say the words "I love you" a lot, but like through all of his actions, through what he did with me and helped me do, like it's very apparent from hindsight that, oh yeah, clearly he loved me as a child. But when you're a kid, it's like if you don't specifically have it spelled out for you sometimes, you think, oh, well, mom says I love you to me more, so I guess mom loves me more.
Yeah, and it's weird that the movie, not weird, it's actually kind of good that the movie, it plays with like gender roles in a way that like only John's character, I'm forgetting the dad's actual name because the names
they don't say them.
Yeah,
They're the Abbotts.
Yeah. But John's character really is trying to follow standard gender roles according to like the American.
They're farmers.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's like the son will take over when I pass away. The mom has babies, and like, well, shouldn't we bring the sister on the hunting trip? Like, no, she's a girl, and it's like, and I like that like everyone else in the family is just kind of letting him do that while they all disagree with it. Like the rest of everyone is preparing to live life. And he's trying to keep life normal. And it's this weird, like, they don't really spend a lot of time on it, but you can kind of see those wheels, like, kind of turning against each other of, this is the world we're in now, I'm trying to keep it the world it was then. And it's interesting.
And that's why I don't mind that his character, in the end, it dies. Even though it seems like that always happens. There's always, like...
I think I knew he was dying when I started watching the movie. It's like he's got to die.
But if you've seen it more than once, there's a ton of foreshadowing.
But having
like
that extra layer of the gender role and how he sees the world and how he approaches it and how, as a mentality, as a father figure, how you're supposed to be, having that mentality die, like that has to die to survive. And it was a very interesting thematic thing, which is why I think the death there works. Otherwise, it would feel, of course, there has to be a death in there that makes you kind of go boo-hoo for whatever reason because of plot. But like it had that weight behind it of that baggage he brings as a character. And I think John Krasinski did that really well.
Yeah.
That's so interesting because I didn't necessarily get that read. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But for me, it was that the daughter is, she's a liability because she can't be alert.
Right.
And so for me, it was just like he was protecting her, not because she was a girl, but because the son needed to be her ears. Like, yeah, she's tough and yeah, she's capable, but there is a limit. And it was just really interesting that he would respect his daughter's shortcomings, but not his son's. And that was kind of like sad because this kid's so fearful and so anxious. Like, he's not going to be able to do what you need him to do, even though he can hear and be alert. Like, I don't know. It was like the siblings needed to come together, and I love that their relationship was so strong the whole way through.
Like, because this really, in the lesser capable hands, they could have been not friends. The brother could have blamed the daughter for the other brother dying, or he could feel that she's a burden on the family, and they ignore all of that, and they're just a good family.
Like I said, it would have been really tempting when they were developing this movie to create a human antagonist, and there wasn't one. There was no. The only antagonism was just misunderstandings and not communicating. It wasn't like it wasn't anyone. No one hated anybody. There wasn't any fist fights. You know, it was really great.
No, there's not even really any like severe arguments. Like there's really like there's some like disagreeing, sure, and like the Millicent's character is obviously tired of her dad trying to get what are they, cochlear implants? Is that how you say it?
Cochlear implants.
Cochlear, and like she's tired of the effort and the constant failure. She's done with it. She's like, I can live deaf. I'm fine. And he's like, you can't in this world. And like there's plenty of that, but it never spirals into a family that like is upset being stuck on their own. And I think that's very important for a movie like this because they are so isolated. They are in their own world. This is all they have. If they hated each other, I mean, there might have been, you could see the argument, well, there's more drama if they don't like each other, but he made plenty of drama with very little, and I really appreciate it.
It's more like the drama of grief than it is the drama of a family feud, because they couldn't talk, not because of the monsters, but because what they were carrying was so heavy. Yeah. You know, so it's, I mean, obviously that's the running metaphor.
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine not having that aspect.
Yeah.
Suffering grief to then immediately be like, no, you can't talk for the rest of your life. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? I don't, having that play out, I couldn't deal with it. I don't know if I could deal with that. Well, yeah, so that's what makes that so powerful in this.
Yeah, it's rough, because if you've ever lost somebody close to you, usually the best way to deal with it is to talk about it. And if you can't talk...
things like starts to eat away at you. I know.
I really like some... bouncing off of how like heavy the movie is with like trauma and grief and sadness, I also like a few grace notes they put in of like the kids playing Monopoly or
Yeah.
the parents listening to music. Like they can
Oh,
still
it's-
listen to
it's a
music
great
through
moment, yeah.
headphones. That's what I feel like The Walking Dead is really missing a lot of times, where that entire show can just be Sturm und Drang, if that's the phrase.
I think it's Strum and Drang.
Like I'm looking at the smartest people in the room. Like I
Guys
hope
from Harry Potter.
Sturm und Drang. I think it's German.
That's what Durmstrang is a play on. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Samantha.
You said we were smart.
That's where my head went to. I was like,
Yeah.
Harry Potter?
But this shows that they're still like finding ways to entertain each other and still having ways to connect with the media that isn't really part of their lives anymore. I think even the rocket thing at the beginning, like he's a child, of course, but it's still like having that kind of toy that's exciting. Like they're just in their house all the time, just looking at wooden blocks and stuff. So to have this exotic, vibrant toy, like that's a dash of color in their lives that kid was probably starving for. Because I think the movie started, it was only like 8 to 9 days in.
Something like that, yeah.
So it was
not a huge
only,
amount of time.
yeah, just a couple months.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it's interesting to see. Like, it's interesting to think about. Like, if you were in this situation, how do you keep yourselves entertained? And I feel like there's been a constant push in movies these days to not have down moments, to not have moments of like quiet and like, oh, this is just what they're doing in their everyday lives. And I like it when movies still do that. And this one did a great job of it. Just kind of how you said, like with the games and everything. Like, it does a really good job.
And like the details, like for the Monopoly pieces, like they don't have the usual trinkets for characters. Like one, it's like this flappy thing. Is it a sewing
like,
thing?
it looks like felt.
felt. Yeah, like a piece of felt, and they're making sure to roll on the carpet. Yeah, I think they really.
Production design did a really great job.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really like the one thing we haven't really talked about much is I like the soundproof basement they were making. Like it's a shame it gets flooded right away, but it was
It
a really
worked. Oh.
yeah. But it was one of those things where like I like that like they clearly had a problem. We're going to have a baby. Babies are fucking loud, and like I like that like without ever like really like, well, how are we gonna deal with this? It's just like, oh, you see them like they're all capable, and like I like seeing capable people in movies. It's kind of nice.
Did you talked in the beginning kind of about suspending your disbelief?
Yeah.
Like, was one of the areas that the baby was as quiet as it was?
Well, they MacGuffin that with an oxygen tank. Like,
Yeah.
we're gonna keep this baby out.
Well, I mean, they had a sound. Was it a soundproof chamber for it?
No, it was just
No.
it was just a box to make
It
it
was just a
quieter.
box.
They're in a soundproof room, and to make it even quieter on the baby, they put a heavy wood door on him. So to
Okay.
make
Give
sure
him a
he's,
gas
The,
mask.
the,
Yeah,
key,
and a
the
gas
key thing
mask.
was the oxygen, yeah.
yeah, like they are doing their best to keep babies quiet because babies are fucking loud.
Yeah, so, but they take it out and they're moving all over the place with it. And the baby's only a couple hours old at that point.
Well, that part is actually true.
Yeah.
Super young. They're super chill for like 6 hours.
There's a
And then
window.
like,
There's a window.
whoa.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it kind of worked.
I defer to your expertise.
Yeah, I just did it not that long ago.
I was done twice.
Yeah.
And there's like this nice little window where you wonder, like, are they alive? Because they're not doing anything. There's nothing going on.
Yeah, they're not pooping, they're not peeing,
They
they're
don't
not
know what to
eating.
do. They're like, wait a minute ago.
Is
I
that
was
like
in a
the
different
eye
place.
of the hurricane?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just got done with this horrible storm, and right when you want to go to bed, the next storm is coming.
Right.
So enjoy it.
It's like getting a Casper mattress and waiting for them to puff up.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's
'Cause
what
it
all
was
babies
like-
are.
That's just what
compact,
it's like to have a baby.
And then it's expanding.
And usually, like, a 6-month-old baby wouldn't have survived in this world because they're so noisy, like, to an extreme
yeah, so
extent.
it's a good thing they got to use the shotgun.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So they kind of they kind of did well by putting it at that about that time of the pregnancy.
Can I ask a suspension of disbelief question
Yes.
though? Like, I was able to suspend my disbelief, but like they were eating a lot of leafy greens, and I don't know about you guys, but like farts would have been a
Oh,
huge
God.
problem for me.
That's the epic movie, scary movie kind of parody of this film.
No, that's like I often wonder about that in survival scenario in
Okay.
any like fantasy world. Like, where do
And
people
they're siblings.
poop?
There are siblings together who are
Right.
going to be like, "Oh, does that annoy you?"
Especially
Like-
since one of them can't hear her own farts.
Oh man, that could be a tagline for a movie.
In space, no one can
Space no one can hear you fart.
I will say, as a former school teacher, It is possible to get through an entire day with silent farts because if you fart in front of those kids, it's fucking over. So
You've seen it control the room to them at that point.
Yeah, I have perfected the ability to fart in front of people and have them have no idea because
That should be on your G.I. Joe training card.
I'm sorry. I just really needed to ask that question. I don't even.
Farting is an important question in a quiet place.
You're not wrong.
But I mean, that would have actually helped us figure out, like, they can't smell, they can only hear, right? So, like, there you go, that's good.
Yeah.
Like, farts do nothing. Cool.
Oh, I would have died early on because I'm very clumsy. I would just knock shit over and be like, oh, well, here it comes.
I fall out of bed like once a month. Like it's not something I'm proud of, but it happens. So I would be dead very quick.
Every door in our house is a 50-50 chance to be like, and that usually happens at night. So I'm like,
when I'm walking back from the store to the house, I would start absent-mindedly just singing something like "Ain't no valley high, ain't no whatever."
And you're dead.
Bam.
That'd be me as well. Yeah.
No.
I was trying to think of the Jack and the Beanstalk song, but I couldn't remember it.
I'm glad
Also-
we've all figured out how we're all going to die. In the
Yeah.
quiet
Yeah.
place.
None of us make it in the Quiet Place world.
Can we? So to take it back to seriousness, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to derail
No.
us with my
farts.
with
How
farts.
was it not going to derail us? But go ahead.
I thought the cochlear implant thing was interesting because in reading about cochlear implants, they're actually really controversial in the deaf
They are.
community because people don't feel that they're necessary. They don't replicate sound correctly, and a lot of people who are deaf don't feel that they have a disability. And that's like really important. So I thought this was really cool because the daughter was very much like, no, I don't need this. And I thought it was just like nice that it felt like an authentic, I mean, obviously she's deaf, so they obviously consulted her
Right,
on this
yeah.
and stuff, but it felt very deftly handled. And I thought that was just like really, really cool.
And I feel like that moment when she figures it out is really beautiful in that regard. Even though he's gone, is the relationship between them because like she was mad at him because he kept insisting that she wear this thing, and then he also prevented her from going downstairs into that radio. And in the end, the thing that she didn't want from him and the thing that he didn't want from her ended up saving the day. So the two of them, like it was almost like a post-mortem resolution for the two of them.
That was
Real
an
Emmett
applause
Otter
moment.
situation.
Yeah, that was an applause moment for me when she like slams the cochlear implant against the amplifier or whatever and turns it up.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, it's a badass moment for her.
I stood up and cheered as much as you can cheer at like 1 a.m. or whatever.
That's why I think the gun cock didn't bother me, partly because, I mean, yes, it is a shift. I agree with that.
Well,
but
and here's the turn on that is like I could watch Emily Blunt, get ready to shoot some
That's true.
alien creatures
Very true.
any time of the day.
Yeah.
So
Did
I also
she have a
cheered
gun
at that.
in Looper too, like that?
She did.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
so
they
think
had
about
always
it.
They
give
had a-
Emily Blunt a shot.
they
They
had
They
a
know my
blund-
aesthetic,
she
which
had
is
the
her with a
blunderbuss
gun.
in
Mary
Looper,
Poppins
though.
returns. Yeah, she pulls that out of the bag.
I just I can't imagine shooting. I don't. It's just sometimes the fundamental way in which they like don't show guns correctly drives me nuts though because
Yeah.
kickback as a pregnant woman who's like, you don't have abs at that point. That shit's had to expand. Like you need your core to survive that kickback.
I think
And
for
it
If
just-
any pregnant woman had abs, I bet it would be Emily Blunt.
okay,
great point.
That's fair.
She is the Chuck Norris of pregnant women.
But I feel like in that suspending disbelief about that. Like I feel like if you could set this aside. Also, my issue with the creature being right fucking there while she was screaming and then running to the fireworks. I was like, okay.
Oh, then you can, if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you totally can. Like, what happened to the placenta? Who
Yeah,
cut the
yeah,
umbilical
yeah,
cord?
yeah,
Like, there's
yeah,
so many
it's very,
things.
very
But it's just
fair.
like, who cares?
But
Because the
you-
movie
yeah.
worked.
It became a
yeah,
nunchuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are also issues that I have in like every movie that
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
like birth or that shows people using guns. It's like maybe just like show things more accurately sometimes because then it would make it more interesting.
But the thing is,
know?
if the movie is good around the details,
No,
I
that's-
don't care.
you don't
That's
care.
fair.
Yeah, and that's
That's actually one of my mottos on set is when I'm about to point out something super, super petty, and then I kind of just quietly say to myself, no one's going to see this but me. It's fine.
And I think
Like,
that's- I think-
it's fine. If people are looking at this tiny detail in the corner, then the movie's got bigger problems than
Yeah.
that.
My
I think
issue
that-
with guns is also generally like I feel we have a problem with them in this country, and I
Yes.
feel that if they were more accurately portrayed in media in the same way that like they stopped showing smoking or like we're like, oh, this is a deadly thing, so only bad guys should do it, I think that maybe we could clear some stuff up. So, but that's like more just me like
You should watch
soapboxing.
Sorry, not to derail for too long. But you should watch Straight Back on Cinemax because
Okay.
they're like their whole thing is realism in how like tactics and all that stuff.
Interesting.
I agree with you, and it's one of those things where like I think the major reason why I agree with you and why it bumps me at the end so much is because it feels out of place. But otherwise, it's like I said.
Because she also hadn't had any like badass Emily Blunt moments prior to that.
I think that's the thing is like what we were saying earlier about John Krasinski being so like man figure and she's so woman figure that the entire movie she was doing laundry and giving birth.
Yeah,
and doing,
it's like I want to see just one thing.
but
where
that's
she's
the thing is like this
cutting a
now
bitch.
that he's gone, she has to step it up, and so that's the moment where she's like, well. It's up to me now, boop, boop. And then she suddenly comes into her own. Now she's mom and dad, and she's just been mother figure the whole time.
I just wanted to see a little taste of that beforehand, but I think that's also like the perils of casting Emily Blunt is like
That's
we
the
all
thing, is,
know.
like, yeah.
But I also think like being quiet while you've just stepped on a nail and are currently
That's very
going through
badass.
labor is fucking badass as hell.
Yeah.
Going up a flight of stairs while in labor, that's badass. Like,
Fair.
That's amazing. What haven't we hit in this movie? Like, what haven't we talked about? We've
Well, one thing I wanted to mention is that years ago, John Krasinski was in the running for Captain America.
Yeah.
And it was kind of seen as a ludicrous choice at the time. And since The Office ended, it seems like he's really been pushing his career to not just get stuck as that guy from the sitcom.
Yeah.
I mean, he co-wrote Manchester by the Sea. He's really been pushing himself behind the camera, and 13 Hours and Jack Ryan, and now like with this movie, I feel like he's really gotten out of the Jim Halpert shadow, and like I'm not seeing too many Twitter jokes about him like looking into the camera distressed anymore, and particularly with this movie, A Quiet Place, because it was so like big and successful and made a pop cultural impact. I think the comparison to use Star Trek The Next Generation terms is that in this movie he really grew the beard.
Yeah. There you
I
go.
get that reference.
I did too.
Captain America reference on top of that. Oh, my god.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was
We've come
super
full
nerdy.
circle.
Yeah.
I'm totally into him being him and Emily Blunt being Fantastic Four. So into that.
Oh, yeah.
It's not gonna happen, but I'm so into it. If it
This
does.
is why I was kind of disappointed Chewie wasn't on this podcast,
Yeah.
because I know she watched Jack Ryan. Did anybody else?
Yes. Jack Ryan.
Okay, so how is he on that show?
He's good. He's really good.
Where would you rank him in the Jack Ryan?
The Jack Ryan hierarchy.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Shit. I mean, look,
Well, Chris Pine's number one, right?
Oh, stop. Stop.
The Shadow Recruit.
So, well, everyone, like literally everyone is better than Ben Affleck. I am a better Jack Ryan than Ben Affleck.
Forgot Ben Affleck. Some of all fears.
Oh yeah.
You're not,
right.
okay,
I
Alec
thought
Baldwin is
that
number one
reindeer-
for me.
I thought that Reindeer Games was a Jack Ryan movie because I'd never seen it and didn't know anything
It
about
sounds like it would be a Jack Ryan.
Yeah.
It is so much worse. Never watch it.
That is one of the best horrible movies ever made.
bad.
Everyone should watch it.
Like
Ho ho ho.
it was. It
Is
was
that the
some-
one with the Elvises?
No, that's
No.
3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Yeah, okay.
It was
the one
somehow.
with the Santas.
It was like
Similar,
as
though.
it was as bad as Geely. Like Ben Affleck has had 2 Geely level turds in his career. That's insane. But anyway, so it would be Ben Affleck, Chris Pine, Harrison Ford's my favorite, but Alec Baldwin was great, and
I
John
just love the
Krasinski.
Hunt for October so much.
It's really good. But yeah.
Wait, so are you saying John Krasinski is on top?
No, I'd say he's like 2 or 3. He's like he's a good Jack Ryan.
good Jack Ryan.
He's not a bad Jack Ryan.
He's sincere. Like I like, and especially in this movie, you get his sincerity, which is interesting because he played Jim as a very not sincere guy.
My
so
biggest
it's-
beef with Jack Ryan was his love interest because every woman on screen was a better actress than her and had more chemistry with John Krasinski. And at one point, they literally dressed her like a Cookie Monster. But yeah, I don't
What?
know.
So into
Wait,
the show
what?
now.
Like the blue
Do
fuzzy
not
costume?
explain that at all, please. I just need to
I
see it.
don't remember that.
How can you forget that blue sweater? It was
No, stop,
hideous.
stop, stop,
Okay,
stop,
sorry.
stop.
Anyway,
Oh,
need
now
to
you
experience
just
this fresh.
demystified it.
Falling down on the
Yeah.
job here.
All right.
Cancel the podcast. We're going to watch it.
Back
Yeah.
to Quiet Place. Is there anything that we have not hit in this thing, or should we move to our quote, not quotes?
I was just
I think we
saying.
hit everything actually.
Yeah, I
'cause
mean,
it's very
It's a
straightforward
very trim movie, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tight. Yeah.
And
Just
I
the
think
use
that deserves a shout out that it's a very tightly paced and trim movie. And
Yeah.
God, I love that type of movie. Like,
Yeah.
say what you will about Premium Rush, but like that's the only other time where I'm like, this was a
that
trim
movie's
movie.
dope.
The Bike Messenger movie?
The
Yeah.
Bike Messenger
Yeah.
movie is so awesome, but like,
yeah,
it's
JGL.
economical with this movie, and I like that.
yeah.
Movies don't have to be like 18 hours.
I felt the same way watching this movie that I felt about watching somewhat, but really reading the script for Gravity, which is where the whole way through the script for Gravity and the whole way through this movie, I was just like, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. And that's because there's such effective use of dramatic irony in this film, where we, the audience, constantly know something that the characters don't know that is going to get them killed, and we're freaking the whole time because we're just like, oh God, no, please, just turn. Or like when that creature comes up behind her, and you're just like, just turn around. And then when the thing squeaks, you're like, oh no, you don't know. Like, you don't know what we know now. And you just spend the whole movie just freaking out at these people. And it's great.
It's nice to
Can
have
you do a commentary for this movie? I would so
Right?
download that.
we should.
Oh, they don't know, and you know. Oh my God.
Emily, that should be your new podcast.
It's just me going, oh no.
Emily exclaims.
The loud place with Emily.
Oh my God.
Don't go in there. Oh no. Hells yeah. No.
Oh my God. That would be like the simpler
You
version
crossed
of-
the line.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I'm so into
Nice.
this.
I want to download this 8
I don't know.
times.
Well, now I got to do this and the dog podcast.
It's a lot of work.
Oh man.
There couldn't be a dog in this movie. It would have been too sad.
Yeah, the dog would have died. I mean, any dogs would be dead.
Oh, yeah.
Dogs are all dead.
My
Those
dog is.
poor raccoons ate it. Really
How-
My dog can't even breathe quietly.
How long do you think the population of Earth lasted? Because they show like a newspaper at one point, and it's like
I was thinking, wait, news printing is loud
that's
as
super
fuck.
loud. It had to have been like isolated in pockets. It couldn't have just been like worldwide all over the place at
Because
once.
there's only 3 of them. I mean,
In this area.
it's gonna in this area though.
Yeah.
But it's gonna take a while for them to kill every single person in it.
So it wasn't like an Independence Day invasion where they're like over every major city. It had to be because I think
although we're in a rural area.
Yeah, so
True.
it could have been every major city,
I-
and now they're
I-
just getting out.
Yeah.
for some reason I'm thinking there was like a meteor that they came off of. I don't know if I read that somewhere, like some
I
behind
don't
the
think it ever
scenes.
explained. Oh, behind the scenes. Maybe.
Yeah, like that's where they envisioned it came from. But it had to have been like slow moving across, because what you were saying, Samantha, because the movie is so isolated, there's just like a billion questions that follow-up can definitely explore. It doesn't feel like we know what the world is really like. We just know what this one little pocket is like.
My concern is just that we've seen so many of these movies that are meant to be self-contained that do well. They get sequels that go, what do we do next?
Bring in the Colonial Marines.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think
happened too many times.
Farts.
Farts.
I think if they though,
Quiet
if
Place too.
they'll approach
Fart
it
noise.
similar to bringing this back around, approached it to as like they did with Cloverfield, where it was like just re-angle the lens a little differently, have a different story and a different unique aspect of that ties in, and bring them in like someone else is dealing with this in a very unique and different way, and suddenly like, oh, you too, like they meet you too, like you can kind of bring that around. I know it's a little cheesy as an example, but just refocus where you look.
So
in
like
that same
Fear the
time frame.
Quiet Place.
Yeah,
It's like
adjacent to the Quiet Place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the opening to 28 Weeks Later. It's like, oh, that's the best part of the whole movie. The rest of the movie's garbage, but the opening is like, oh, this is how somebody else dealt with the outbreak.
But
And
yeah,
now
if you
the
took
rest of
that
the shit.
concept of like you can't say anything, all of us could come up with like, well, what if you had this scenario? What if you had this scenario? And there's your sequels.
Yeah.
Keep everything after they figure out the solution, because that's not interesting. Just we win because we figured it out, and getting that information out there, that's just as how it's going to go. But all the stuff during that period of time is still interesting.
I'd have a Saint Bernard in a helmet.
And what happens if
So
they
no
get
one could
smart,
hear
like
her.
the tomatoes from Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and they wear earmuffs?
Oh.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
There's a reference for you.
I am now like obsessively thinking about how farts are gonna get us all killed. Like I can imagine someone just sitting there and you can't control it sometimes. It just being like, and everyone's like, no, and then you're dead.
Especially if I was eating leafy greens. Like the only thing in my garden
They're
right
taking
now.
a lot of Beano.
Yeah, the only thing in my garden right now are like kale, and we're growing Brussels sprouts and peppers. Like that
Good
is
God.
a recipe for disaster.
The Quiet Place requires a soundproof bathroom. Like, just
Oh
requires
my
it.
god, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into quotes.
In a movie where no one talks.
In a movie where no one
got
talks.
one.
So I will accept favorite moment if you do not have an exact quote. I'm fine with that. But Elliot actually has a quote, so go for it.
Yeah, so I like the moment where it's kind of early on in the movie, I think, where John Krasinski and Emily Blunt are in the basement together, and you're kind of just getting to know the characters, and John Krasinski sweeps his hand over his face, which means like beautiful, and Emily Blunt just like enlarges her cheeks because she just feels like bloated and stuff.
Yeah.
Because she's pregnant. And that's something that's really cool just in terms of saying a lot about the characters without actually having to vocalize it.
Yeah.
Just like without having to say like them both having to say like I love you, he can just say like you're beautiful. Non-verbally, I feel fat. Like I didn't say anything about that. Yeah, I thought that was a very nice little moment.
Yeah. Mine is also just kind of more of a moment than a line, but there's a line attached to it, and it's when John Krasinski goes, woo! And it's not just because of the line, it's because it's more of the reaction to the line of the kid, like, why are you killing us, Dad? Like, it's just a really great, like, no. Like, we're next to the waterfall. We can say whatever we want.
Yeah,
and just seeing the relief on the kid's face of, like, I can yell right now. It's a beautifully acted, wonderfully shot. Like, it's just a awesome moment in this movie. I loved it.
I love the word rocket, which now I know the sign for from watching this movie. But the use of the word rocket, in the beginning, the kid thought the rocket was how they were all going to escape. And then the rocket is what got him killed. And then later on, the rocket is what saved his mom. And so I love that moment when the dad was like, rocket. And I was like, aw. And then he set off the fireworks and you're like, oh, that little boy's obsession with the rocket like came back. And it was almost like he was saving his mom. It was really, really cute.
Did you think about Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Why Cookie Rocket?
No. I did not.
Does anybody remember
I
that?
will now.
I liked that the girl Reagan had like she's a teenage girl, and I loved when she got behind the wheel of the truck and was just like practicing her driving, because that feels like such a teenage thing. She has her own like private hangout, and she still has aspirations of like finally getting behind the wheel of a car.
It's a good moment.
She was while it was rocketing downhill.
I mean,
Well, we've brought it up already in the episode, but when she wakes up to the flooding down in the basement, and that first moment of just assessment, where is everything, what's going on, that hit me very viscerally, and it stands out the most in this movie just because of how much it was like I was freaking out. I was like bouncing in my seat, trying to not like okay, focus, what's going on? Like if I yelled at my screen, I would do that, I would exclaim at it, but it just that stands out to me, and it's my favorite moment in there. Just that tension that I don't get that a lot in like tense movies or scary movies, because I don't generally feel very scared or tense because of some of the artifice. You watch enough of these, you're just like, okay, but this really cued in on it and like manipulated me, and I was like, I kind of like that.
That works.
Yeah.
Review system. Movies where isolation plays a theme.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Castaway.
Oh, that works. Yeah.
That was an easy one for me. I love Castaway, and again, the way it tugs on your like emotional, visceral reaction to things. So that scene where he pulls his own tooth out is just like, oh God, it's more me going, oh no, at the TV.
And you could argue he doesn't pull his own tooth out. He
Well,
smashes
he
it out with a rock.
It out, yeah, that's true. with a skate, with an ice skate.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's awful.
it's a rough scene. I'm gonna go for Attack the Block. Isolation is it's a little sketchy on it, but it still kind of works for me. Mostly because it all is in their neighborhood. Like it's not global taking down. They're going after the block, and it's up to these kids to defend their block. And I love that. Like it's one of those things where it's kind of like this one. It's like, well, how would the world deal with this? Doesn't matter to this movie because it's all about how these kids deal with it. And I love just kind of.
it's also about people learning who don't normally communicate with one another.
Yeah,
Learning.
exactly. Yeah, communication plays a huge part of that thing, because here's a whole bunch of ruffian kids and people who are just trying to get by, who do not speak this. Like it's both English, very different types of English, and they need to learn how to communicate and actually go towards the same similar goal. Great movie, Attack the Block.
Believe it.
I'm gonna go with an interesting one. Is maybe a stretch, maybe not, but I'm gonna go with The Raid.
Okay.
Because they start off with like the safety of it and come in. They're isolated. They get into the building. They are isolated from each other, and they have to learn to communicate with fighting. But like they learn to communicate with each other with fighting, but
It just lost it. You were doing so good.
Communicate with fighting.
Like Jim Cotta.
Oh.
Yeah,
but there
you're
is a
right.
lot of isolation in that movie, and having to readjust how you approach the problem and ingenuity through trying to traverse that building.
I'm going to go with Hell in the Pacific. It is a World War II movie with Lee Marvin and Toshiro Mifune. Get it? And and it's basically two people reenacting the Pacific Theater in World War II. They're isolated on this island, and the ending is tremendously disappointing and weird because it had to be recut for a studio. But yeah, so it's a wonderful allegory in that this was in the same way this was an allegory for grief, and the ending just didn't quite track.
That works.
I would say Open Water.
Okay.
Which you have a man and a woman isolated, alone, and I mean, there's the potential for children later in their lives if they manage to escape, and they're surrounded by very scary monsters, which are even scarier because they're real.
Okay.
All right. I want you to pitch every movie from now on.
Okay.
If you don't want to watch it after this pitch.
That's Elliot's podcast. It's just Elliot pitching movies.
It's like a 15-second podcast. People will be into it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's all I'm good for. Just 15 seconds.
Call it fever pitch.
There you go. All right, that's it for today. Let's do a quick round of plugs because it's hotter than fucking here. Of course, listen to Venture Brothers podcast, every Monday, 10 a.m. I don't know what episode's next because I don't know exactly this one's coming out. So that's that for me. Sam, is your show out?
It will be, yes, it will be by this time. So listen to Samwise. It'll come out on Tuesdays. It is an advice podcast in which I answer every question by watching the Lord of the Rings extended editions, including their special features. If you wish to ask me a question, send me an email, sam.wise.ath@gmail.com, and I'll be setting up a Google Voice number soon, just not yet.
Oh, you can have a phone number?
I know.
That's
It's
crazy.
so legit.
Bells and whistles all.
This is like some Fraser Crane shit.
I know. God, I wish. I love Frasier so much. Anyway, so in addition to all of that, visit athpod.com. We have a new article every Wednesday and most Fridays. So Mondays you got Venture Brothers, Tuesdays Samwise, Wednesdays article, Thursdays After the Hype, and Fridays another article. Most of us around the table have written for it, will write for it. We're all really talented.
That's true. That's accurate.
Oh, and follow my dog on Instagram at Saint_Lottie, Laddi. She goes on great adventures.
Anybody else have anything to plug? That was it. That was good.
I'm on Twitter at Elliot Campos.
What happened to Escape EL?
I had to make it into a name that people could say on podcasts.
Ah, got it. Makes sense. So I'm going to say goodbye. Bye.
See ya.